Another live with Tyler Dickerhoof. I can never Dickerhoof. I said that right?
Yeah, you got it. Yes.
You're like, not
It's been
really.
said much worse. Okay. It's been said much worse. I am in my 40s. I've gone through middle school. So I've pretty much at this point heard all of it.
You've got it all. Well, I'll
Yeah.
refrain. I'll refrain. But y'all, Tyler has been a client with Brand Builders Group for 4.5 years, and I've had very little interaction with him over the last 4.5 years. So I'm super excited for this conversation. Before we get into it, Tyler and I agreed we're going to pretend we're at a coffee shop. We have our coffees, just getting to know each other. But to give you a little bit of background of who this gentleman is and why I personally believe he's so dang incredible, is his mission is to really help men and women embrace their insecurities, and really dive into their strengths so they can create impact in their industries. So his business is called the Impact Driven Leader. That's what his brand is. He got into this, and actually, I'm going to ask you to share how you got into it. But before really going down this path, he has become one of the top 5 income earners in a network marketing company called Isogenics. And so some of the things that I'm going to dive into too is just like, so many people in my life have personal opinions on network marketing. And so,
I didn't know that question was coming, but hey, we'll field it. As I told you, there is no limit. So go for it.
Yeah. So now I personally am a big fan of network marketing companies. I don't have that, but and that's not really the purpose of this combo today, but I do want to scratch the surface.
Good.
But what I love about your story and your journey and what you have shared is that you used to believe that your worth was derived from how much you knew. And so I think a lot of people can relate to that. And so much of your life was about convincing other people that you had all the answers and you knew everything, and that you would just force yourself down this journey of like, either I'm the one that knows all the answers or you're not going to get that close to me. And so that really, truly put a damper, I think, and really damaged a lot of relationships that you probably would have preferred not to have damaged. And so through your own personal development journey, I think you've had a lot of growth around self-awareness and really transforming to make yourself someone who can be self-aware, someone who can be whole without having every answer, someone who knows how to be vulnerable so you can show up as the best version. And now you're helping other people do that too. So welcome. I'm so glad that you took this time. I know I just said a lot, but catch us up to speed. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you just, described the whole, if we're going through a Joanna Gaines house, you just described it in full detail. You didn't leave much out. And I guess that's how I prefer to live. And at this point, and, as I was thinking about our conversation today, and I was thinking about this journey and much what you have mentioned, why a personal brand? Like, where does it matter? We live in a day and age because of social media that every single person has a brand. And it really is their relatability. It doesn't matter if you're a line worker at a, fast food restaurant to a top 50, top, Inc. organization. Your personal brand matters because the people that interact with you, they're always kind of wondering, like, who are they really? Elle, who is she really? Or Tyler, who is this really? And there was actually a conversation I had with a couple of friends. I meet with some guys once a week for coffee, and the conversation came up about Taylor Swift. Okay, just bear with me here. There's relevance
here. Talk about her all day. I'm here for it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm enamored. There's 2 figures right now in my world that I'm enamored by. Not so much Taylor Swift. I think it's interesting, just the whole context. And then Deion Sanders. Okay, so we can go into either one of those. That's a piece and part of my world. But what I was thinking about Taylor Swift is the thing that astounds me. And my wife and my daughter and my niece went to the live concert in Seattle. And then my wife invited myself, my buddy, a few other families. We went to the theater production this weekend. And 2 things struck me watching that. I've never been to one of her concerts. I've seen a few of her interviews, whatever else. I like her music. I'm not ashamed of that. You go through my playlist on Apple Music. I have everything from Hillary Duff to Tool. It's all of it. And one thing that struck me was, 1, how much fun she was having. Now, if you haven't seen the movie, a little bit of clue into that, it was filmed on one of her last couple shows in LA. And yet that genuine, I am loving what I'm doing, that exuded from her. That was her personal presentation. The second thing that I gathered is how genuine she is, how authentic it is. And I think in the space of where I'm involved in the transformation that I've had to go through, there's a lot of people in my life that have thought different than what the reality was. Meaning it was this, I am kind of fit. So sometimes people are like, oh, he's this hard, callous. And I would present myself quite honestly as an a-hole. That was a part of my life. And it was a protection mechanism. It was an armor I put on from a traumatic event that I had as a teenager. That's something you and I share. Right. And that's how I reacted to it. And unfortunately, as you described, that pushed a lot of people away in my life. And as I sit there and I watch Taylor and I watch her present herself and realize, no, she is who she is. That I would imagine if she and I were talking here, she would be the same person. There is no difference. And that's what I think our world is yearning for. And for me, sitting in an audience at a movie theater, I was able to grasp that. And what's so funny is I've seen this in the work that I do and watching this space. You talk about being a client of Brand Builders for 4.5 years, and we've seen a massive evolution in personal brands in that period. You guys have done a phenomenal job of help driving that, really helping identify, is personal brand all about, hey, it's all about me and my ego, or is personal brand about understanding who you are so you can show up authentically in every instance?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I know in tying this together is so often in leadership, so often in our world, we see one thing and then our experience is something totally different. There's a very popular figure in today's world in leadership and in just one of the top coaches supposedly in the world. And I struggle with them because the first time I ever heard of them, I'm like, oh, I'm catfished. Meaning everything they presented on the outside gave me one opinion. And everything I heard was like, is that the same person?
Yeah.
And so when I think about my work with brand builders and spending time with, Rory to Elise to, Jeremy to Jay to, I've gone through quite a few people. I need a lot of help from a lot of different angles, a lot of different strengths. One thing that I am adamant about doing is no matter what instance I'm in, 2 things: owning how I show up, and 2, being okay with saying, I'm sorry if I did something that didn't show who I really was. And to me, that authenticity, that can be gained by coming back and thinking of the first day that I sat in the Vaden's basement and sat down with Rory and understood, what problem am I trying to solve? And for me, that was coming to grips with my insecurities and understanding my insecurities were holding me back. Not anyone on the outside, my insecurities.
Yeah.
And if I were to evolve and grow through that in the process of growing through that, how much I could serve and help others.
I'm curious, what
This is
was
a bit of a monologue.
Oh, I think that's super helpful. And now I'm like, I want to.
You see, now you got Taylor Swift, you got Deion Sanders, you got the whole mix.
Well, one thing I'm just going to go a little bit deeper here is coming into the Brand Builders ecosystem. What was your biggest insecurity?
Oh, I mean, that I had value, that I had some type of value. Here's something that I want to share, and a little bit of background. I grew up on a dairy farm in Northeast Ohio. Okay, I was a small, not very athletic. Again, I grew up on a farm, and that was in a day and age where people mocked and scoffed and jeered at people in agriculture. And it's shocking to me today that our world is so different, but that's the world I grew up in. I grew up in being embarrassed of having the interest, being in 4-H, being in FFA, showing animals, raising cows, doing that stuff. That was a world that was like, oh, you're a less than citizen. And that's how I fed. And what's interesting is when I talk to others that grew up in that similar way, that have gone out into other industries, it's not uncommon. And it's really kind of shocking. We're in the world today where we've come full circle. And COVID drove a lot of it, where people like, I want a tangible connection to the world. And I want a tangible connection, something that isn't just made up. Like the number of first generation farmers continues to grow. The number of people that during COVID left, the high rises of Manhattan and bought a farm in the surrounding tri-state area to, relocating to other parts of there's enough that it's measurable. Yeah. So that was the world I grew up in. Yeah. And part of me growing up was always being one foot on one side, because I enjoyed it. I liked growing up on a farm. I enjoyed working with animals. I loved it. And then in some social settings, I was like, ooh, I smell like cows. I'm embarrassed. Yeah. That's what it was. And so that's where it was this constant drive to say, what value do I have? And the value, I was smart, right? I didn't get great grades because I didn't apply myself, but I was smart. I was smart enough to, go to an Ivy League college. I was smart enough to, do whatever else. And so I always hung on to that. And the problem is I know other family members that have done so, and I see it and I cringe, and I know I've been there. Yeah. There's no better way to drive people away.
Well, it's interesting because it's going, do I have value? And then you leaned on your intelligence and shared your intelligence to the point of because that's what gave you the confidence. So it's interesting to kind of see how that would help you, but also in the end damage you too. And how often do we all do that for one way or another? And, I also think it's interesting that someone, your biggest insecurity was, do I have value? And you had accomplished so much by then, and you built one of the biggest teams in a very competitive networking marketing company that there is, and have just proven that there's so much value for you to add. So now that we're 4.5 years into it, what's your biggest insecurity today?
And let me take a step back.
Sure.
And part of 4.5 years ago, there was a bit of a challenge. So my wife and I started together. She started in our network marketing business, and I was along for a ride or as part of the team. And so that was one of my big insecurities. Do I actually have value in this business? And, it was almost, there came to a point, and this is maybe to speak to people working with loved ones, or working with partners, or working with family members, is we found ourselves often competing against each other. And part of that was just misdiagnosed. My wife and I are two totally different people in regard to, she's an introvert. She wants to be behind the scenes. I have grown to I've done speaking since I was 8 through different events. I enjoy being in front of people. I've come to grips with it. I love to interact with people, more extroverted when I am in my secure space. And what we found is she thought I was constantly driving for validation and accolades. And instead I was driving to serve. That's my love language. Number one love language is to serve. And I was driving to serve in an area that I felt most comfortable and able. And she saw it as, you're going after validation and you're driving your ego. And so it really came to us growing to a point. It's like, no, that isn't me at all. I want to serve. And that's actually, I'm pretty good at it. I enjoy serving. I enjoy interacting. And so a lot of it was understanding, okay, is it my insecurity that I'm struggling with? Or am I trying to take on the insecurity of others because they're putting it on me? And what I found is that happens. The worst gift we can give anyone, the worst gift that we can give anyone around us is our insecurity. Meaning, what insecurity I have, I'm going to put on you. Oh, I don't like getting in front of crowds, so I'm going to put that on you. And if
Mhm.
you all of a sudden like, no, I'm fine with it. Well, then it's your ego. Like,
Yeah.
no, I'm good with it. It doesn't bother me. It's not an insecurity. And
Mhm.
so I think that's part of the whole growth process of really understanding and in me gathering
Mhm.
every single person in the world. I hate to tell you, Elle, I'm going to share this with you. I have insecurities. And guess what? You do too. I think there's a song like that, right? Isn't there? It's
Good
no
show.
shame. What was that?
I said there's a Netflix show called Insecure, and it's really funny.
Yeah, it totally. And
Yeah.
it's coming to grips with that serves people because it makes it say, hey, it's okay. We're in this together. And
Yeah.
the worst thing that we can do is try to run from them because
Mhm.
then it's like putting a band-aid on an ugly, nasty cut, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes you got to take the band-aid off, get it stitched, put the right medication on it. And if we just keep
Mhm.
putting band-aid and band-aid and band-aid and band-aid and band-aid, it
Yeah.
gets nasty and infected and it stinks and it's just gross.
Yeah.
That's what happens with our insecurities if we don't accept them and just say, hey, yeah, I have sweaty pits. It's okay. That's why I wear a black shirt. Let's
Yeah.
move on. It doesn't matter.
Why you focus on leaders today, right? Like that's who
Yeah.
your impact, right? Why do you have a heart to help leaders with overcoming their insecurity?
I think there's twofold. I think I saw that's where I really thrived.
Mhm.
And somebody asked me the other day, they said, Tyler, we just got done with high school homecoming. Or we have 2 kids in high school. And they're like, oh, you were homecoming king. And I'm like, no, I wasn't even on the court. I wasn't even like considered. It wasn't at all. There was no aspect at that point in my school or whatever else there was leader. I was a leader outside of that in another area, but I
Mhm.
wasn't leader there. And I think what's so enamoring about it is so many people think, "Oh, leadership, that's not for me." When in reality,
Mhm.
all of us are leaders. We got to
Mhm.
lead ourselves first, and then we have the opportunity to lead and impact and serve others outside of it. Here's
Mhm.
the other thing that breaks my heart. We're recording this on a Wednesday. I release podcasts on Friday. This Friday, the podcast I am releasing is called The 5 Lessons I Learned Coaching Middle School Football. So right now we have our final game tonight. I am coaching middle school football. I'm coaching my youngest son, his team. And one of the key takeaways, and this is probably in my heart of heart, it's as ingrained as anything. And one of the lessons was kids deserve to be led well. And I think that's when I think about leadership and I think about, great mentors like John Maxwell, who's been so big in my life and just to understand his arc and growth. I mean, here's the number one attributed leadership expert in the world, and to see and he identify through his works how much he had to grow, change, and evolve.
Yeah.
It looks like there's hope for me. And this is what I saw in my life is a lot of insecurities held me back from being a better leader for my clients, being a better leader for my family, being a better leader for my friends, being a better leader for those closest to me.
Mhm.
And what I see the people that get damaged the most, and one of the real, the first goal, the ultimate goal in me coaching middle school football is that the boys had an amazing experience, that they
Mhm.
went through the year and they felt encouraged. They felt like they had a place. They felt like they belonged on the team.
Yeah.
Because when I was in 7th and 8th grade, that wasn't the case. I was
Yeah.
told, you're not good enough. Don't even come around. Don't even be here. It was the 1, 2, or 3 stars. Everyone catered to them. And
Yeah.
ultimately it ruined our, entire high school program. My senior year, there was 4 seniors on the football team. 4.
That's wild.
Why? Because there was bad leadership. And
Mhm.
that's all there was. Our job as leaders is just to help people. It's not to tell them how bad they are. It's
Yeah.
tell them the truth, but help them be better people.
What would you say are the most common, I don't know if I want to say mistakes or like lack of self-awareness around these things that the leader, like people that you typically work with Like, what are their blind spots that maybe they're not seeing, or they're going, I know this is an issue, I just don't know how to change it. Like, what are the most common ones?
There's a keynote that I have. It's also a piece that I have. It's called the 4 barriers of leadership. I'm going to give you a secret. They all center around insecurity. Okay. Insecurity is one of them. So insecurity is one of those, meaning, if they really find out I don't know what I'm doing, that classic imposter syndrome, they won't follow me. Here's a lesson that I learned from a great a friend now, one of my podcast guests. The reason you don't feel empowered to what you're doing is you're in a position you've never been in before. You're not going to, so often in COVID, people are like, oh, this is the hardest because I've never done it. It's like, yeah, because you've never led through it. You shouldn't know. Unless you go from general manager of the Reno Aces, like my friend Emily Jansen was, to general manager of another AAA baseball team, you're going to have no idea what you're doing. If you ever step into something new, you'll never know. So insecurity in general. The other one that there's 3 more. I don't want to belabor it, but I'm going to focus on one. Then it gets to the other one that just blows people away. Number 2, inactivity. Inactivity meaning I don't want to have the hard conversation. You're in sales. A classic situation in sales is like, okay, I need to make another call, but if I call Elle, she's not going to buy because I've already gone through this before. And it's just like, I'm not going to call. Right. Or in the case of you're leading a sales team and you're like, I don't want to reach out to Elle because then it's going to be a nightmare. Then we're going to have all this drama and then it's going to upset. I'll just let her be. She'll figure it out. That is the classic example of inactivity. They'll just figure it out. It's not worth me having the conversation. They'll either figure it out or they'll leave. So many leaders adopt that because they're either unsure in their own ability to communicate, or they're so uncomfortable in those difficult conversations. One lesson that I've learned, and I embrace, I love having difficult conversations.
Yeah.
I love it because 2 things happen. You either grow from the conversation, or you go, meaning, hey, this isn't working for me. Awesome. Okay, great. How can I find you another place? The last one that I think is the number one biggest. Whenever I say it to people, they're blown away and they're like, oh, and it's the one struggle that I had for the absolute most of my life. And it's still something I have to temper. A barrier in leadership that so many at top levels of leadership struggle with, and they have no idea they're struggling with. And yet, once I say it, you're going to be like, And once I describe it, you're going to like, oh, I know that feeling.
Yeah.
It's called intensity. The number one issue that I had to deal with was my intensity. I'm not trying to be passionate here. It's just me. I'm excited to talk about this, but you probably feel that intensity. Now, there's so many leaders that have no idea they're intense. And they're like, well, I'm just pushing and it has to be this way. And you feel it. And I had one person in my leadership community describe it this way. It was so awesome. I can't take credit for it because it was so awesome. And I have kids, I had little kids, but each one of us have had this instance happen to us. Intensity is like laying in bed, somebody flipping on the lights as you're asleep and you wake up and you're like, oh,
yeah,
that's the feeling of intensity. And you're like, just turn off the lights and go away. And here's the thing. If I were to turn off the lights in my room and turn them back on, wouldn't make a difference, right? It's the context of it. The middle of the night, you're like, too much. And I think that is one of the biggest areas that self-awareness, leadership, branding is identifying today. And it's so interesting because I saw this from an individual the other day. And it wasn't in a place to call them out, but through threads, I did. I'm not a computational person. I really don't. And I haven't done this a long time. But they said, hey, I value my time, my free time to work out, listen music, golf, spend time with family, having balance, having those things. And I'm like, really? Because 2 years ago, you said everyone needs to work 3 6-hour days every single day to get ahead in life. So you need to work 18 hours a day. You need to structure it as 3 6-hour days. That's how you get ahead in life. And now you're telling people, no, it's all about balance and, spending time with family. So which is it, man? Because it can't be both. Now you can say, I was wrong in life. And now I realize it's not worth chasing that rabbit because that rabbit gets away and then you're starving because you've chased everyone away. And that's what bothers me because I've lived some of that life. I've fallen under that, I guess, load and realize, man, you asked me, and I didn't want to say this, but this is truthful. And I don't know why I didn't want to say it, but the context of what we're doing here. You asked me, what's the number one thing I'm working on right now? The number one thing I'm working on today, it was yesterday, it was the day before that, is being the best middle school football coach I can be. That's the number one thing. I'm dead serious. And I'm not, that is the number one thing. And I think that's in context. Well, it's that, and it's understanding, yes, my son's an 8th grader. I have a daughter who's a junior, a son who's a freshman. And I understand over the next 4 or 5 years, the most important place that I can be is being with them. And I think that's where many parents, many leaders, they're like, oh, I got to chase. I got to get this. I got to get that. That costs. And it costs a lot. And a lot of it's driven by insecurity, meaning I need to do that to gain validation. No, you know what you need to do is you need to be appreciative and understand and accept. You know what? At 2:15 this afternoon, I'm going to leave my house. I'm going to drive to our middle school. We have a 7th grade football game start. We have an 8th grade football game. After that's the final game of the season. That's what's most important. Now, what I get done between now and then, I'm going to maximize what I can do to serve people. But come that time, that's my commitment. And if I sit here and as a leader, and you hear it in different places and different people, the ones that are truthful and honest about it, the people in our lives are the most important people to serve and lead. If we focus on that, I believe this, people are so graceful. They give us grace. And the people that don't, I don't want to do business with you.
What would you say are signs for someone, if someone's sitting here going, I think I'm a good leader, like I don't really have insecurity, like what are some signs of going, it's worth looking at this a little bit more? Like how does this come up in people's lives?
Well, you just stated it there. The first thing is admit, you have insecurities. Everyone does. Now, there's a point of growing past an acceptance. I know I have insecurities. I know this is what bothers me. I know how it shows up. But then beyond that, I'll share something a friend of mine shared yesterday. I sit on a board of a youth soccer team. And my friend, who happens to be the CEO, the executive, and I shared this with him. I said, hey, I realize you and another person just can't work together. And I shared this, like, it's okay. I get it. It's difficult. Oil and water, it's no big deal. I think you're both good people. I know you both have the best interest of everyone, but it's okay. And he told me this yesterday. He goes, that really bothered me. I'm like, okay. And it was almost like, confrontational, but it wasn't, because we're good friends, and kind of have him played out. And he goes, I really took that to heart. And he goes, I made an effort to make sure whenever I interacted with that person, I was embracing, and I was like, how collaborative and do all those things. And you know what's funny? That person turned around and said, hey, can we work together on this? When they previously had said they didn't want to work together. And I said, I appreciate the fact that bothered you. Because you were aware enough to say, instead of just writing it off, it's never going to be, you're aware enough to say, that's on me. I need to do my part to work through it. And I think, as I encouraged him, said, man, that self-awareness is extremely valuable. And it's understanding that, coming back to, yes, we all do have insecurities. Maybe they're not showing up today. And maybe it's a new one. Maybe it's a new relationship. And it's saying, okay, now great. How can I embrace that and be okay with it?
And then also go, but can I make it better? Can I work on it? right?
Yeah.
Versus going, it's like, what's that? To me, it's kind of fun to go, let me be like figure out what all these things are and then make sure I can not necessarily get rid of them forever, but less reactive, less impacted, or create more self-awareness. Now, I'm curious what your thoughts are. Because there's probably people being here going, okay, you've worked with brand builders for 4.5 years. You seem to be in a really good place here. Why are you still working with them? So if someone, when it comes to someone going, hey, I have had a successful business. Now I want to do something that I'm really passionate about. Now I really want to go after my life's calling and build a business around that and build a brand around that, which is what you've done. Why is it taking so long? What's going on here? What have you been doing for 4.5 years? Now,
uh,
pre-context, y'all, it's a 3 to 5 year journey. That is normal, but most people don't know
yeah. I mean,
that. So what have you been working on?
here's the thing about that. It's like, my strategist, Jeremy Weber, and I were talking about this yesterday. I said, we're on the right pace. And that's one thing that I've had to embrace, and just, it's a little bit of a faith piece for me. It's like, hey, as long as I keep moving forward, I'm good.
Mhm.
God's going to put me in the right place. It's okay. It's when we get in trouble. Oh, it needs to be faster. We need to push the envelope. That's when I think we get disgruntled and we get frustrated. There's been at times where I'm like, I even read something this morning. Oh, did I miss the timing? Man, that's a comparison quality.
Mhm.
That's saying, I've mentioned John Maxwell. He's served me a lot. His books have served me a lot. In one of his books, he shares a kind of a story, an anecdote, a situation with two individuals he was mentoring. And they were both the same age. And one of them, their business was just growing leaps and bounds. It was like doubling every year. It was like exponential growth.
Yeah.
And the other one, cohort, similar qualities, everything. His business was just, it wasn't going backwards, but it just wasn't growing much. It was flat. It was flat. In the second one, he went to him one day. It's like, what's wrong with me? Why isn't this going? Why isn't this working? And John's like, whoa, time out. You can't compare.
Mm.
You guys are going to the same destination. He just got to the airport before you. So he's taking off. You're sitting and you're waiting. Your flight will take off. Just keep waiting. Don't get frustrated and think I need to leave the airport and go get a taxi because a taxi will get me there faster. No, just stay the course. And that's been part of my daily, I guess, agenda, my daily drive, my daily discipline is be better today than I was yesterday, with the intention and effort to be better tomorrow than I was today. And if I stay on that path, and it's so funny as I look back and the amount of stuff that I've put together, I shared with you the 4 barriers. Well, when did that come? That came earlier this year because I stayed with the process.
Yeah.
Is there something else that'll come? Yeah, there'll be other things that'll come. And I'm not the person who is give me a blank slate and I'll draw it all. I'm not. It takes me a while to kind of experience and go through an instance and create, bring things together. I'm like, oh, I know how this works. And so that's when I look at, the 4.5 year journey. I'm actually on a 10-year journey. I am. And I see that. The point that I want to be, if they talk about hockey stick growth, right, in business, you're familiar with that, it's just kind of flat and then all of a sudden goes like that. If I were to time that perfect, that would happen in the fall of 2028. That's when it would happen. And there's a specific reason why.
You can share it?
My youngest graduates high school in June of 2028. And it kills me. I, committed to an event. I'm excited to go do it. I'm going to be speaking in Montreal, Canada here in a couple of weeks. And it bothers me, but yet I understand it's not by intention. It was just the way it worked out. I'm going to miss my oldest son's football playoff game, home playoff game. And it's like, I don't want to do that. I'm not doing it because it was a bad, just the way it had to be. And I have to be there to serve. And I'm glad to do it and excited to do it. But those are things that's like, it's not worth saying, I'm going to go chase this speaking career. I'm going to go chase this or that and not learn the lessons that I need to be learning.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say have been your biggest wins, like the things you're most proud of from the last 4.5 years of as you've been working on this? Or
Mm.
I have another
You know,
question.
yeah, I mean, I think the biggest wins is the fact that I can, sit before my wife and my kids and say, "Hey, I'm working at this.
Mm,
I'm working to be better at it," and also knowing at the same point, I'm able to stand here and do this. But
mhm,
this is an even a bigger draw, and deeper. And I mentioned you and I learning about you, shared a unfortunate tragedy when we were, teenagers. And
mhm,
I'm not going to dip into that. You can share that however you want. I know it's front and center, but when I was 14, I had a younger brother who died,
mhm,
and he died in a farming accident, and I'd driven over him. And that day, in a specific incident that I can track back and I can recall so vividly, was the moment that I used intensity as an armor to protect.
mhm,
See what happened on that day. I won't give you the details, but afterwards I was being questioned about the situation from a sheriff. And he was sitting on the hood of his car. I'm 14. I'm a little kid. I'm scrawny at that point, short. And he's asked me questions. I'm standing in front of him and he's asked me questions. I'm like, kind of fed up with it. I'm like, it was an accident. It was an accident, dude. And I say to him, I said, "Hey, I will answer whatever question you have, but I'm going to go into that barn where there's 50 cows that need to be milked. And I'm going to do that. If you want to come with me, great. If not, we're done."
mhm,
And I said it so boldly and vividly. I can remember it happening like that.
mhm.
And that was the moment when I look back and say, oh, that's when intensity became my out. If I can't get through it, I will push myself through it.
Well, it's like a
And
control.
so
You're able to
it was,
regain control of the situation there.
I think, control, or that's it. Give me your context why you see it that way.
Yeah, because you were not in charge. You were at the mercy of his questioning, right? You're basically your life just got flipped upside down in an instant. You were lacking complete control over everything going on. And then you have this person questioning you. And so by being able to put yourself going, I'm going to go do this, you can either come or not. You're now in control of a situation you had no control over, but the intensity gave you that ability to do it. Potentially. I don't know. That's just how I saw it.
Yeah,
Was just,
no, I mean, and I appreciate that. Again, it's, sometimes what we see and what the world sees are two different things. And um, that's absolutely a piece of it, right? In 10 situations, if you're the one, I'm going to push through, I'm going to go through, well, then
mhm,
you are in control.
mhm,
I think as I think about it,
mhm.
it was more of, I know this is how I can protect myself because I can move faster through it and with it, go through it
Yeah.
faster than someone could sit there and really dig in to say, oh, what's the real story?
Mhm. Yeah.
I, yeah, I appreciate your insight there.
Well, I think it's interesting because I do think a lot of people see intensity as like people increase their intensity when they feel out of control. Like I've
Yeah,
seen other leaders do
yeah,
that. It's like when they're feeling like they don't have control over a situation or insight or whatever it might be, they all of a sudden become very intense. So
yeah,
I think that's
yeah.
a common thing. Um, what would you say have been the biggest like challenges over the last few years when it comes to this journey and really helping people and like being on a mission to serve other people? But that's the fun part. Like the fun part is like getting people commenting on your podcast or hiring you to
Yeah,
speak and then coming up after you going, how do we work with you more? Or, engaging
yeah.
with blog or your book club that you have going on. It's like all of that looks so good. You go to your website, oh, it looks so great. But we all know what we see on the outside is not what always happens. So what have been like your biggest setbacks or challenges the last few years?
Acting in spite of all that,
Mm,
meaning when that doesn't happen, that
yeah.
doesn't regularly happen. I mean, some people it does. I
Mhm,
haven't been this, um, to me, again, that growth is very flat, and it's understanding, why am I doing this? I'm doing it for me, and I'm doing it, and more to your point is, I know if I continue to do this, and continue to serve and continue to help, that my brother's life had meaning.
Mm.
And I think that's as much part of it, and understanding I'm doing it for everyone else, but I'm doing it in the growth in me and sharing with others. One of my what's called one liner, or just one piece of me, is my desires to help other leaders get healthy too, because I had to get healthy first, and I'm actively getting healthy. I'm getting healthy, mentally, physically, spiritually, relationally.
Mhm.
And so those things, and a big part of that is taking those barriers and set them aside, taking a brick out of the wall, just start pulling that brick out of the wall and say, hey, it's me. I'm okay with it. I'm going to screw up. My insecurity is going to show at times. And I have to just, yep, that's it. I'm sorry. I tried to prove how much I knew. Let me just eat my words and say, my bad. I'm sorry for making everyone uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that's knowing that the journey I'm on is a longer journey. And I'm cool with that, because at the end of the day, if I am on that journey, that's what has meaning.
Yeah.
At any point that I decide to just get off, it's not worth it. One of the lessons that I shared for a football team: you never lose if you don't quit.
Mhm.
You only lose when you quit. The
Yeah.
game of life has no clock, meaning there's a clock. We just have no idea how much time is on it.
Yeah.
And so if we never quit, if we're willing to just stay with it one day at a time, as long as you keep moving, yeah, you'll get somewhere.
Well, I think that speaks to a lot of why we personally choose to work with mission driven messengers, is because if you're focused on that mission or that legacy or making that impact, and you really feel like it's your life's calling, then it's easier to endure. It's easier to go, I don't care if this is happening in 2 years or 20 years, it doesn't matter. It's going to happen because I'm not giving
Yeah.
up on it, because this is what I'm called to do. And,
Yeah.
I think that it's very clear that this is your calling. And this is what you're really passionate about. And I know you've put a lot of time into creating like your process and methodologies, and just testing things and seeing what people respond to and what resonates and
Yeah.
what doesn't. And you've just been in front of so many people doing this, over the years. What I would love to know is, like, who do you feel like you're best positioned to serve? So if someone's like tuning
Yeah.
in, going, all right, maybe there's something here, like, who is the person that should reach out to you or should subscribe to your podcast?
Yeah.
Besides
I
everyone.
think, yeah, I mean, here's the point is, yes, I can be so broad as everyone. I think in our world today, the people that I resonate most with, that are struggling with this, are the leaders that are kind of this Gen X millennial, the Zennial leaders that now all of a sudden are leading organizations. And they're, as I describe, on the peanut butter and jelly between the sandwich. Meaning you have Gen Z that are coming into the workforce. You have the baby boomers that are saying, well, it used to be like this, and this is the way it needs to be. And you're sitting there and you're trying to, like, how does this work? Like, how do I make all this work? And I think that's where I see leaders so ill-equipped. Meaning, do you really have the emotional intelligence? Do you have the ability to be that next generation leader who's authentic and has a personal brand and is okay? Hey, this is what I'm about. These are my beliefs. I'm not trying to spill them on you. I will gladly be who I am and be authentic. I'm not going to hide from it, but I'm also not going to go to the extent of overpowering you, because this is how I think the world should be. And that's this evolution that we're going through. And I describe it as a sea of change, and understanding, all right, how do we lead here?
Yeah.
And leading well there is really, I believe, being truly authentic and not falling into the toxic authenticity where I'm just going, well, this is who I am, and I'm going to dump all over everyone. It's like,
Yeah.
no, that does no one any good. At the same point, it's not being callous and hard. And, there's a piece of my content, Rory helped me figure this out. I give him all credit. It's the empathy spectrum. And I believe, we mentioned insecurity, and I believe the solution to insecurity is empathy. It's having empathy for yourself and others. I describe empathy, I think it's one of the most misdefined, misunderstood words, is putting your arms around someone and walking with them.
Mhm.
And the challenge is when you put your arm around someone, you have to be vulnerable because now you're exposed and they are too. And that's the only way you can work together. Now I'm a person of faith and I'll revert to there's another element here is don't be unequally yoked. If I put my arm around someone and drag them, it's not going to go well for either one of us. And if
Yeah.
they go faster than me, they're dragging me. It's not. So we have to walk in concert. We have to go together. And piece of that is the empathy spectrum, meaning one side is an a-hole, is callous, is hard, is you can't get inside of me. I'm so intense. I'm just going to go through you. Either you're with me or not, get out of my way.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of leaders. But there's also the other side of the spectrum, and they're doormats. They're enablers. They're people that are overly apologetic. They're just constantly, it's my fault. Oh, I'm sorry, this or that, always appeasing instead of saying, no, it's not going to work like that.
Mhm.
And healthy is coming to somewhere in the middle. Is there an
Yeah.
absolute mark? No, but it's practicing and having that empathy. That's the style of leadership that I believe is going to help people and help us move forward in this transition of generational leadership.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that's, it's so funny when I used to do leadership coaching at our former, the amount of
Yeah.
leaders that I had to explain what empathy was and like teach them about empathy. So I love that that is your solution to insecurity. And I know there's so many techniques and tactics and like ways that you go about like helping people develop this in their own lives and create that
Yeah.
awareness and just grow from it. And I know you've been working on something that you're about to launch pretty soon here.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. And it, you know, the things that if you're a leader of anyone, it doesn't matter what level of leadership, I would encourage you to check this out because ultimately when you are leading people there, even yourself, it's like there's always a ripple effect that has, and it
Mhm.
starts with you, and you're going, do I want to create this ripple effect that make people feel solid and secure and like close and supported and you know, just really aligned, or
Yeah.
you know, is it going, I'm just going to do what I've always done and I don't care.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Yeah.
the society that we want to be a part of. So
Yeah.
if someone's going, yes, how do I do this? Teach me all the
Yeah.
ways. Like, I know I have so much to learn. Where do I go?
Yeah. So the name of the course, just the signature course, the impact driven leader journey. And it's going on that journey. And we start with awakening and talking about how do we come to grips with our insecurities? How do they show up in the world? How do they affect others? Well,
Mhm.
then it's grow. It's grow through that. Then ultimately it's lead, what leadership looks like in that capacity. It's the impact driven leader journey. And right now you can go to my website, tylerdickerhoof.com. You can go there. You can make sure to subscribe to all the emailings I'll get to. As soon as that's out and released, it's going to be in the next few weeks. You will have that available. And really, again, like you described, it's embracing the fact of being impact driven. Meaning, what is that? What's that in our life? And impact is to leave a legacy, is to impart something on people for the better. It's not what can I get for me? It's how do I make a difference? And that's being impact driven, meaning as I show up today, I'm trying and aiming to make an impact. Whatever that may be, it's going to change people from here forward. If it changes me, well, it's by virtue of others being impacted. And that is my drive. That's been my leadership ethos philosophy. That's what really drove us in our network marketing business that was different. It's not about me. It's how can I serve and help others create change in their life? To me, that's really following through. And it's understanding the barrier is me, meaning
Yeah.
my insecurity, my inability to come to grips with me from a self-awareness. That's my barrier of being impactful. So if I can work through that and then lead in the healthy, really connected, authentic, genuine way, man, the result is impact.
Yeah, that's good. That's super good. Well, y'all go check out his website, tylerdickerhoof.com. There's also a free course on there. If
Yep.
you're going, I don't want to wait until this offering comes out. Like I want to dive in his podcast. You can subscribe there or even just jump into his free 4 days to maximum impact course. It's pretty awesome if you ask me. And that will give you just kind of like the tidbit, the scratching the surface of what's to come with this new offering that he has coming out. But other than that, anything else you want to add, Tyler?
Well, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you and the Vedans and everyone else who went out on a journey to start brand builders and to serve people to, that are as well mission driven. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for brand builders and the way that you guys have helped me and served me and helped me identify my own insecurities and how those show up, how I can transform through them. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity and the service that you guys are giving everyone.
Well, I do have to say a genuine thank you back, because you came on as one of our OG clients, where there aren't many of you left, and you stuck with us through all the changes that we've experienced over the last 5.5 years. And so just thank you for trusting us and for helping us be a very small part of you living out your dream and what you're called to do. So appreciate your time today, y'all. If you have questions for Tyler, you can go ahead and reach out to him on his website, or what's your Instagram handle?
Tyler_Dickerhoff. Also the Impact Driven Leader, also active on LinkedIn. There are 2 other random Tyler Dickerhoffs in the world. Unbelievable. Look for the bald guy, and that'll get you in the right spot.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.